Welcome back to Aging Boldfully. My name is Susan Rohrbach. Aging Boldfully is about living fully, finding purpose, and overcoming obstacles. This is the time in our lives to focus on the things that matter most, no matter where we are on our journey. Aging well involves many different elements, which we will explore with guests that are incredible members of our community. During our conversations, they will share lessons that inspire me, and I hope they inspire you as well. Today's show is about how to cultivate happiness, whether you're in a very good part of your life or a difficult moment. And we'll add a little bit of research to it, back it up with some research and some stats, etc. So my guest today is Dr. Ian Bergen. Welcome, my friend.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. This is such an important show. I mean, the topics that you cover, and especially at this phase of our lives, you know, they're transitioning when we get to the next chapter in our lives, aging boldfully. It's what it's all about. So
Right.
I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah,
I have to say it.
yeah.
I'm just saying it right now.
Well, I'm saying that, the one thing I want to mention before we start is I want to thank you because I don't think I've ever done that. Back in the fall, I came to you with an idea for the show, and you put the wheels in motion very quickly. Not that you dragged me kicking and screaming, but there was an element of fear. There was an element of getting me outside of my comfort zone. And I don't think I would have done it without you encouraging me.
Well, when you ever brought the topic up and I said, people need to be talking about this, I said, who better than Sue?
Right.
And it was you. So no, this is great. And you're doing such a good job. And it's and again, the fact that we have cable TV and we can reach out to people in our community, you know, it's so important.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Right. And certainly other ways too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Through YouTube and podcasts.
Well, there you go. It's not just.
Right. All sorts of ways.
A lot of ways.
So why don't we start off by you telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I can tell you that I lived in Franklin for many, many years and was an educator in Franklin. I just recently moved, but love the community. And as part of my life in Franklin, I started off as a 6th grade teacher, and then I was a principal at Davis Thayer. Then went on to be principal at Horace Mann, and took on different roles in the community. You know, it's just doing, school committee and being part of that whole thing. So it's just education has been a big part of my life. You know, so so that's pretty much it. I have a grown daughter and a new grandson, so I've been busy with that. So it's a new phase of life. You know, and I kind of left that whole education world behind, and I'm starting a new chapter. And that's why this to me is so important, because so many people are leaving one world behind, you know, that world of work and that world of busyness, and then suddenly we're in a new phase, and then it's kind of navigating through it. So again,
I mean, excuse me, when I think of you, I think of, you know, when you left your role as principal of Horace Mann, you reinvented yourself. But if you look at the span of those years, you keep reinventing yourself, you know? And I'm sure it's been an adjustment moving out of a community that you were so well established to a new community. But again, it's another form of reinvention. So I think that's so cool that you have these different phases of your life even after you retire, that are meaningful and purposeful.
That's right, and that's like why this message has to get out, because but the very fact that people think it's easy or going to be easy, and that's why it's how do we navigate it and how do we talk about it and understand there is going to be anxiety that comes with it and all those the fear that comes with it. But that's why having these conversations is so important, I think.
And I think it's work, and there's got to be some intentionality, you know, that goes along with it.
Yeah.
So, so tell me about what you wanted to talk about today.
Well, the what I wanted to say too is part of my journey, which I didn't complete there when I was, which I should have, is when I left education, you know, and what I noticed when I was in working in middle school, and then for a short time I was acting language department head at the high school, and I saw I see a lot of kids, young people struggling with mental health issues. So I've always been, that's been a fascination for me, is how do we've got to deal with all the things that young people are going through. So I decided after I left, formal, being a principal, that I found a course in positive psychology to get a certificate. And it was being run by Ben Shahar was his name. Anyway, he was a former Harvard professor. And at Harvard, he taught a course on happiness. And it was the most well-attended course that Harvard has ever attended. 600 plus young people flocked to that course to hear about how do they deal with all the issues that they're dealing with. And what I learned from that course is applicable across all ages. And it was profoundly impactful for me to have that association and to learn what I did about positive psychology.
Mm-hmm. So what did you learn?
Well, the interesting thing about positive psychology is that traditionally what people would do is they would study what's wrong with people. Mm. What positive psychology did is they did a lot of research and they said, wait a second, who are the people who end up actually being the happiest in life? Mm. Who are those people? That's what the research. And they said, okay, and they studied and studied and they found research-based evidence of who are these people? And then we can all learn from it and take those things and apply it to our lives. So that was what was so impactful for me about positive psychology. That there are a lot of research-based things that can make us happier. And then, of course, we have to determine, like, what do we mean by happier? And that's not like skipping through the meadow, singing, whatever. And it certainly isn't, which a lot of young people think, that it's going to be, I'm going to be famous, I'm going to be wealthy, I'm going to be like the Kardashians and have $8,000, million of cosmetic surgery, and that's going to make me happy. Or it's going to be the perfect relationship that's going to make me happy. It's going to be something outside of me that's going to make me happy. And what the research tells us, it's nothing outside of us, it's what's inside of us. So how do we, and you mentioned the word resilience, how do we build that resilience? How do we build that strong inner core so we can deal with all this stuff that life throws at it? Young people especially need to hear it, but so do people that are going into different transitions in their lives, right? And then I think about what older people are going through,
right.
and if we think about some of the challenges, think about it. It's sometimes it's health issues, sometimes it's losing a friend, it's losing a spouse, it's so many things, and then it's leaving all the friendships that maybe you made at work, and then suddenly this empty feeling sometimes comes over us, Said, what do we do with that? What is that empty feeling? So the more we talk about those things and understand our own emotions, then we can say, okay, we can start applying this stuff to our lives and get happier. And not, it's just, happiness is more just a feeling of calm and serenity and peacefulness, but along with, especially what you're doing here, is finding a purpose. We all have to have something that's bigger than ourselves, because that's the key to, one of the fundamental principles of it is we have to find a cause bigger than ourselves. And when you go back even, and I wasn't as old as Plato, but when you look at the wisdom that survived all of those years, it's always finding something that's bigger than yourself, so.
Right, so it's not about chasing something. And
short-term happiness when you chase something, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's about evaluating yourself, right?
Right.
And one thing I find interesting too is that sometimes we avoid that by distracting ourselves, either with things or with people or with experiences, right?
But that's exactly what happens, and and it happens with young people. It happens that this feeling that comes over, and sometimes it's related to, we think about it. Some of us have experienced trauma in our lives growing up. Sometimes there's big trauma, but there's also just little traumas, like being neglected or people too busy to really give you the love and attention you need. So there's this trauma that we carry with us all the time. And so then you compound it by some of this anxiety that comes along with other things. And then this feeling, and it comes over us a lot of times. And then what do we do when this feeling of uneasiness or anxiety comes over? What do? And you just said it. We eat. I put on The Office, mindlessly watching it 25, sometimes when I'm feeling that, and then I notice, but it's, or the chips, or it's, and with young people, substances relieves that. It's self-medicating. And even many senior citizens now we've talked about that before, self-medicating prescription drugs or alcohol.
Right.
We think we can squelch that feeling and stop it by doing that, but the more we try to suppress that feeling of uneasiness and anxiety, the worse it gets.
Yeah, it's almost numbing, trying to numb
There you
yourself rather than feeling it and working your way through it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, someone who is outgoing isn't necessarily happy, right?
No. Sometimes that's a facade, right? Yeah.
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 So,
What you said though is like to feel it. It's easy to say, you know, okay, you got to feel this. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage when that feeling comes over,
mm-hmm.
and it does for all of us.
Mm.
And the only way we can access that inner stuff is we have to let ourselves feel it. How do we do it? And it means just sitting in silence sometimes. Turn off everything and sit. And then when you sit in that silence, the feelings that emerge, sometimes it's incredible sadness that will come up, maybe from childhood, but the feelings surface. They always will, but only in silence. That's why silence is crucial. And having time to just sit and allow those feelings to come. That's courage. We think courage is fighting in a war. Or no, it's facing all those inner feelings within us, and they're always there. And there's ways we can do it, and that's one of the ways is just sitting in silence. You know, it's important.
So then what happens?
Then what happens is one of the things that for me,
when you feel the feels.
no, you're absolutely right.
Happens?
But one of the things that came from me from doing this, and again, I'm not an expert on anything. I can only go through what I experienced. But I just know some of my worst times, you know, kind of be stressful sometimes being a principal of, you know, you got a lot of things you worry about with the kids and all that. But I just remember being silent and listening, and then all of a sudden, I kind of started reliving. I had came from a big family, and I was loved, but there were so many of us. There was just this incredible sense of being invisible. So I remember sitting in silence, and then I'd feel shame, and I'd feel guilt, I'd feel embarrassment. It all came up because that's the way I was made to feel. I shrunk to be invisible. When I walked around high school, I'd never said a word to anybody. I'd hide out in the bathroom. It was that kind of trauma, you know, but then when I sat with it for a while, what happened? I suddenly felt this sense of compassion for myself. I said, I was just a little kid. I said, you know, I need, and that's one of the key elements is when we're feeling that is to, and we experience the trauma that we felt growing up, is to be able to say, self-compassion. It's treating ourselves with such gentleness and saying, you did the best you could. And this wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault that you were neglected or that you were alone or that wasn't. And then you went through some tough times. So these are the kind of things you kind of say to yourself when you allow that self-compassion. But the beginning and ending of all of it is self-compassion. If we don't treat ourselves like we would treat a best friend, then shame on us. You know, it's just because it's you know, it's being our own cheerleader. It's being, you know, I think about all the times, I still do it. I'll make a mistake and I'll call myself every name in the book. And I said, why are you doing that? Why would you do that to a friend? Would you ridicule yourself? Right?
Yeah.
And I just think it's the self-talk. But the root of it all is self-compassion. It's don't you think? I don't know. Does that make sense?
No, I know, but I mean, I totally agree. I just wonder, does self-compassion build resilience?
It's the root of it, because once you feel I can't even begin to tell you what happens as soon as you start to feel that for yourself, how you view other people in the world, because and you get stronger that way because your connections increase, because the more you're compassionate to yourself, what does it turn out? You're more compassionate to other people. And what do you start sending out into the universe with people that you meet? And what do you get back from it that makes you happier, that makes you, because when you care about other people and when you try to understand them and when you look at them with the same compassion that you look at yourself, then you finally see people. You see the person who's serving you food in the restaurant. You see those people, and you look at people and you say, I wonder what trauma they went through. I wonder what they're struggling with. And it changes your whole view on life. Again, I'm not an expert and only can say what the research tells us, and just from my own limited experience in dealing with that, but it's.
And I also think it sort of builds that ripple effect, because then you reach out in kindness to someone else and they feel it, and hopefully they will in turn reach out in kindness to others.
Right, right. And the other thing too is that I think part of the piece of self-compassion a little bit is this whole idea, I don't know if I'm going off on topic here a little bit, is that everything, one of the things we start to learn from positive psychology too is that we can always choose our reaction to everything. I wasn't there, but I think most people have read Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl there, who was in the concentration camp for all those years. And he would look around and he would say, at any given moment, you can always choose your reaction to something. So the ones who died were hopeless and whatever, but he kept this vision of going, forward. He thought about his family. He thought about what he was going to do when he got, and he went on to become a therapist after that. He actually was a therapist before, but he went on to develop some really powerful therapy around this whole idea. Any given time, we can choose our reaction. So when we're feeling a sense of despair, choose a different thought. I had to go to some event today, some medical thing, just a checkup thing. And I thought, oh, this is awful. Okay, choose a different thought, because I'm going into whatever. So, okay, choose a different thought. How lucky we are that we have the best medical people in the whole world. That I'm lucky that I live here. So just a different thought immediately changes. So at any given time, we can always choose a different reaction. You're in traffic and someone cuts you off. All right, you can start swearing, screaming. That I tend to do that, but I'm just saying. But you can also say, hey, you know what?
I never do that.
Yeah. But I know I'm sounding glib, like I've got it all. I don't. I mean, but it's those little steps at a time, But it's always choosing that at any given moment, you can always choose how you're going to respond, because we can't control anything that's around us. Mostly, we can't control what's around. It happens to us, but we can control how we react to it. Always, that's in our control, and that builds resilience, because you have that power. And as soon as you recognize that power, I'm not going to let the person that insulted me bother me. I'm not going to go have a sleepless night because that person called me a name or a stupid doofus, which has happened, So
not Your Majesty.
not Your Majesty. But those kind of things can kill us sometimes, and say, you know what, I'm not going to let that bother me. I'm going to choose to just look at it differently.
And I think there's a sense of freedom too when you just focus on what you can control. And I think that gives you, I think for me it lessens my anxiety and gives me some element of peace. Not that I don't know if that necessarily ties into happiness, but
it does.
It frees up some room, right? I'm not consumed with all these other feelings, and I'm focused on, the positive feelings that I can control.
But that's it. But then you think about it. What are the things we do and think about the most? We think about the future and worry about most things that don't happen, or about the past with regret and all that. What's the only time we have? It's right now.
Yes.
So what are we doing right now in this moment? Because the future we can't control.
Yes.
And we worry about it. I say, what's my grandson? Is he going to be okay with the AI, all this?
Yeah.
I can't control that.
Right.
You know what? But right now I can be so engaged with what's happening right now. I can look outside and see the most beautiful day we've had in a long time, and celebrate that and feel it, because I can't control all the dumb, stupid mistakes I made in the past, which,
I can't believe there are any.
You think about it, sometimes, you lie awake at night and you say, why did I say that or do that? I was so stupid, and you're embarrassed by it. But that's part of the self-compassion, where you say, that's when you say, you know what, I did the best I could, and I did mess up. And I think about, along the way, the dumb, stupid things, and everybody does it, but it's just like what we say to ourselves about it. Right?
Well, it's that pursuit for perfection.
Right.
Right, that doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist.
So that's when you have to forgive yourself.
Yeah.
And move forward.
Yeah.
And hopefully learn from what you did,
But
that
that's
you
it.
didn't feel like it was probably the best that you could have done.
But that's exactly what you just said. It's the question you say is, okay, what did I learn from it?
Right.
You know, how did it make me stronger? I think about some of the dumb things when, like a relationship that went bad or something, and you're in this grief stage. But then I said, okay, how did it? Well, and I grew in other ways, you know. So then I said, okay, I wasn't such a big dumb stupid, you know, doofus. I did some good things, and then that's part of, building positive emotions that we're talking about. One of the things is, instead of looking at the past and thinking about all the mistakes, is to go back. And one of the things that does build happiness is savoring the good memories. Is savoring. It's called savoring. And it's like, instead of saying all the dumb, stupid things. So when I want to savor, I'll say, oh, I remember that we were lucky enough to have like 6 weeks in Hull in the summers and to go away, and I could, and all those wonderful, glorious days that I'll savor that, right? And I'll savor when my daughter was born, and I'll savor, all those wonderful moments as principal when things went really well. There were 3, but that's okay. No, that's okay. But there were a couple, and they stood out, you know what I mean? So it's sort of,
That's so
right?
funny.
But it's just, yeah.
Oh my God.
So savoring, that's it.
Yes.
When we talk about some of the
Yes.
strategies, it's sort of,
Yes.
yes.
So are you saying during those, because, as we get older, right, we face a lot of challenges, health issues, loss, as you've mentioned, loss of family, loss of friends, financial issues that come up. So, how do we stay content in those moments? Is it just simply taking it one moment at a time and choosing how you're going to respond to it?
That's one thing, but
Yeah.
then there are other ways as well, and we talk about, even in that time, it's finding a sense of purpose and giving, So if you think about, one of the things is kindness, acts of kindness. When you do acts of kindness, what that does to your own, inner core when you do them. So, for example, we know people who are going through tough times. So, okay, we have an opportunity, even though maybe we're feeling sad, and especially in the days, who right now, I got to get outside of myself here, because I'm just dwelling on self-pity here a little bit, and that's okay. We've got to feel sadness. That's okay. We've got to do it. But then, who can I reach out to? Who might need a word from me right now? Who might need just a kind text, or one kind thing that I could do today? And that what it does for you, not only are you lifting someone else's spirit, but right away it takes you outside of yourself and your own sadness or whatever you're dealing with. So reaching out to somebody else, that's an important thing that builds, that builds that sense of, resilience. And the other one is, when you're feeling that down, sad feeling, is gratitude. The most important thing we can do is just, okay, what am I grateful for today? Instead of saying, okay, these are all the things. Okay, I've got to have bunion surgery, and I've got to, and there were some really sad, awful, terminal illness kinds of things. It doesn't make them, less painful or any of those kinds of things. But there's always a moment where we can be grateful, where we can say, I'm just so grateful. Right now, I have this day. And how many people that I knew along the way don't have it anymore? It's gone from them. I get it. So I'm going to complain? I'm going to feel sorry for myself when I have the gift of this day? And then you start to think about, maybe the people, part of the savoring too is when you want to feel grateful is, who are the people that came along in my life most when I needed them? And
that was me, right?
Yeah, but the people, and that's exactly it. When I think, who are the people who make me laugh, that make me feel that I want to be with them, who lift my spirit, and I'm grateful for that, right? So that's one of the things, right? It's that, and I think about, like, my beautiful best friend is now living with dementia, and she's pretty, she doesn't really recognize me anymore, but when I'll go to see her, I just talk to her about all the stupid things we did and how much we laughed and how lucky I was to have her in my life. She's, and it's just one of those things. It's grateful. I'm so grateful I had her, even though she used to I just remember in middle school we were in detention every single day because all we did was laugh when we got thrown out of every class. But I'm grateful that, you know what I mean? It's just like, but those things, it's gratitude that's, you know, it's sappy, but it's, you know, it's really important, and it's one of the fundamental building blocks of positive life is gratitude.
I think of, as you're talking, I think of what I try to do, and I'm certainly not perfect, is look for moments of joy every day, really search for them. And when you have a family member, just as an example, who's really ill, you go through that difficult time looking for those precious moments of joy.
That's it.
And even though those can be difficult situations and moments, it can create other such beautiful moments, like reconnecting with family that you haven't connected with in years. And all of a sudden, you realize how close you were when you were younger, and it brings you back together.
Yeah.
You know, so looking, but even everyday stuff, every, you know, sort of routine day, you think it's here's another copycat day, but it's how you're looking at life too, and looking for those moments
That's
of
it.
joy.
It's the lens that you look through. You can look through you know, that lens, but then you can say, okay, like just what you just said. You know.
So what did the Harvard research show in terms of greater purpose? Because is greater purpose what we've been talking about, but is greater purpose, like, I know reaching out to others, but does that mean like, okay, I have a special interest in a particular area and I'm going to go volunteer there? I mean, does it mean that?
It can be any of those things.
So it could be as small as what you're
right.
talking
It doesn't say
about.
I'm going to go and I'm going to win a Pulitzer Prize, or I'm going to, you know, it's going to be maybe it's doing something to help, you know, write a note to somebody else, but it can be volunteering in the community. It can be those kinds of things. But mostly, it's finding something that it's another big piece of it too, is that the purpose is sort of keeping promises to yourself and making sure that with this life that you've been given, you know, that you have an obligation to take care of it. You know, take care of it's by exercising, it's by eating right, it's by making sure that we don't let ourselves fall apart. You know, it's like
honoring it.
Yeah, right.
You've been given a gift,
right,
and you have to honor it. And you honor it in ways like, as you said,
that's right.
Your physical health, your brain health, you know, and being intentional with it.
And then the purpose too is like, it's to keep learning all the time. It doesn't mean that you have to, you know, write the next great novel, but it means maybe you commit to, all right, I'm going to read 20 pages today, or I'm just going to keep learning. I'm going to go on and take a little course or something, just keep this brain going. And that's really important. And one of the other things too that tends to happen when all of a sudden, it's like with kids when they go away to college, one of the things we know right away what happens is suddenly they have a blank schedule they have to fill. Everything's been structured for them their whole lives. Their appointments are scheduled. Now they go in, they get a syllabus. You have 87,000 things due from this course, and you have a blank calendar. It's the same, you know, and the kids fall apart because they don't know how to schedule their time. And it's the same now with people our age that are going and transitioning, and all of a sudden we don't have the work schedule anymore, that we have to be at work at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we don't have the meetings that we were blank. Anxiety happens. Anxiety. So one of the ways we find purpose is to structure a life that is going to be, you know, meaningful. It means that we get up at the same time each day. We put a exercise routine, and maybe we find, you know, especially find time to sit in silence. You know, if it's 10 minutes in the morning or in the evening, and just sit and then feel the feelings that we've had. You know, so it's keeping the little promises to ourselves. You know, that we make to ourselves. I'm going to exercise. You don't have to run a marathon. Maybe I'm going to do every day. I'm going to do 15 sit-ups, or I'm going to walk today. I'm going to start off. I'm going to walk a quarter of a mile, tenth of a mile. I'm going to do something, but that's purpose. That's that's setting something too, so but it is keep learning. We have to keep learning, right?
Yeah, and being careful not to numb yourself, as we've said, with
Yeah.
other substances.
And to notice it when it happens. You're right,
Yeah.
Sue. It's like sort of as soon as you start to put on the mindless TV or scroll and scroll and scroll,
Yeah.
which is what a lot of young people do because they're
Yeah.
distracting. They're distracting. But
Yeah.
then stop and say, why am I doing this? What is it that I'm avoiding? What feeling is it?
Yeah.
And most often it's fear, it's shame, it's guilt. And saying, and just living with it and be able to say, okay, right now I'm frightened. I'm frightened. Fear is huge. That's the fun, fear is, and it's at every age. Kids fearful about, all the social things that they have to deal with we have fears, you get older, other things, but okay, I got to deal with it. I'm going to just welcome it, say hello to it, and then just say, okay, I can do this,
Yeah, I mean, we talk a little bit about addiction, and people automatically go to substances, but we all have addictions. My addiction is TV.
Yeah, mine too.
So if I want to numb myself, that's exactly where I go.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking, okay, what is it? What's causing me to try to numb myself and not deal with whatever I am feeling? And as you said, I think it's important to sit there in stillness and try to evaluate, some of the things that you're upset about or something that's troubling you.
And it's the hardest thing because I know I tend to put on some noise in the background or something because I'm frightened of silence. It's scary because then all these feelings do come up. But it's but then the other thing too, it's about forgiveness too, because sometimes I'll make a promise to myself, I'm going to stop scrolling on my phone today or whatever. And I'll do it for like a day, and then I'll slip, but then I have to say, okay, I'm going to start again tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know what? And it's sort of, but to understand why we do it, it's understanding all those emotions. But I do think too is that, and when I talk to young people especially too, it's like there's so much trauma that has gone on in people's lives, and there's so much that comes with that. But if we don't deal with it, no matter how old we are, for 100, if we're not dealing, it's still there if we don't let it rise to the surface. And we've got to teach young people that as well, that they've got to, understand what happened to them and that not blame parents or any of that stuff, that parents do the best they can, but some of the situations that we came from, young people come from, they're all with us if we don't deal with them. They don't go away, no matter how old they are. They're all there. So if we don't deal with trauma, small t trauma, doesn't mean that we were, sexually abused or beaten with, but that small t trauma, that wounding of the soul. If we don't deal with that at our age or any age, life will take a whole different path, and that's why we have to teach kids about it. And your show is so important because the more that you have these topics, we all have to hear it.
I think the wounding of the soul is so is so important. And I mean, and I think for me, maybe the wounding of the soul, to be honest, is just, my parents, wanting perfection, and chasing perfection. And, you can't do it. And I think making mistakes is really more important than perfection because then you learn from your mistakes.
But that's it exactly. And that's what, and we think that was a long time ago. I'm not going to worry about what happened. No, it's still there. And then again, young people, it's that perfectionism that they're living with, and that they have to be perfect, and they have to get into the right school, and they have to do this. And with older people, it's all there, all the things that were there, and then it goes through our mind all the time. It's there unless we silence ourselves, and then we just sort of listen to it, and then say, that isn't me, that was never me. What's me is right in that essence of all happiness is right inside every single one of us. But we just don't know how to access it. And the more we learn, what the research tells us about how to access that strong inner core, we'll do great. But especially in these troubled times now, we can't control the Strait of Hormuz. We can't control some of this stuff that's happening out there, but we control how we react to it and how we're going to, maybe support our community or do what we can do. But we're not going to fall apart. We can't.
Well, I think handling all of those small t's, as you described them, and shame and regret, I think once you deal with it, it you can fill the rest of that space with
You said
happiness.
it, but you said it because
Yeah.
that's that you said it. I wish I had said it. Is that it frees up that space?
Right.
Because once the shame and the guilt kind of go away, then all of a sudden you're flooded with a whole bunch of different emotions.
Right.
And it isn't going to be perfect every day,
Right.
and they're going to be really. But it's just the more that we just keep changing the way, choose different thoughts all the time. So I don't have to. You know, I can control this, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So we covered a lot of information.
This was very good.
I think you were very good.
I think I was very good. It's ridiculous, but it's
God help
because I have
me.
a positive view of myself. My father used to say,
It's
"Ann,"
working. Whatever you're doing is
my
working.
father used to say, Ann, are you being a fathead again?" I said, "Dad." Yeah. So anyway,
Yeah, that's funny.
yeah.
Awesome. So let's, so what I'd like to do at the end here is to provide viewers with concrete steps as to things that they can apply to their lives that, may help in terms of encouraging or creating more happiness in their lives.
Yeah. No, I mean that.
During the easy times and during the really tough, difficult moments.
And that's exactly when we look at this research, what they did is that no matter what trauma, it wasn't all the people that they studied had these blissful childhoods, and all. They found even when people had suffered trauma, when they applied, the principles that we're talking about here. But in terms of just recapping some of this stuff too, it's first and foremost, it's generating that sense of self-compassion, treating yourself as you would treat somebody else. And then remembering all the time that you can choose your thoughts on any given time or any different experience. You can choose how you respond, and that's really important. The other thing, as we mentioned, is gratitude at the end of the day, or on a Sunday night or something. When maybe if you're feeling low, say, okay, what are 3 things I'm grateful for? You don't have to do it every single day, because then it gets to be like a big, but just keep reminding yourself of that. The other thing that I didn't mention too is just being out in nature, just walking and looking around and seeing how beautiful the world is. And again, to be able to say, I am grateful that I'm here and that I have this day. The other one is, again, keeping promises to yourself. Whatever you try to do that, because that's really important. Making sure that one of the other little tips is at the end of the day, instead of kind of ruminating of things that went wrong, it's WWW, what went well. What are a couple of things that went well today for me? Just put, you can still acknowledge some of the dumb, stupid things that happened along the, but say, okay, this went well, and tomorrow I get a new, fresh start, or whatever. And making sure, if we want to really keep our spirits up, it's important to find some form of exercise, and especially if it can be, we can find ways to interact with other people. That's really important. If we can find groups to join, or because friendships are really important, especially the older, if we've lost people, our work colleagues, we need to still generate and find ways, activities we can join, things that we can do in that way. I tried Tai Chi the other day, and I said, no, that wasn't for me.
Really?
Yeah, it wasn't
I'd love
for me.
to try
Yeah,
Tai
no,
Chi.
I don't know. I just felt like so stupid.
Yeah.
Oh, and then I'm criticizing myself when I did that instead of choosing a different thought. But anyway, but you know what I mean? It's just finding different things, and setting aside that time, setting aside 5 minutes just in stillness. Just start with 5 minutes. And then watch what happens. Just watch no matter how old you are, and watch what happens when you just sit. You breathe, you just focus on, you don't let any thoughts come, if a thought comes in like, oh, I'm supposed to go to the dentist tomorrow, okay, let it go. Sit, breathe. It's being meditative, but there are lots of apps that can help you with that.
Right.
But that's crucial, so it's just 5 minutes of exercise, 5 minutes of silence. It's gratitude. It's understanding that you can control, that, you can choose your response at any given moment. I think those things are all important. Savoring is really important. And reaching out to someone who's in need when you're feeling the worst, to say, okay, who needs me more right now? Because the second, and I said, I'm going to keep saying it, the second we go outside ourselves and find a way to help other people, we ultimately are the ones who, benefit from it. That's it in a nutshell. I think I've done a nutshell right
Yeah,
there.
you've
It's a big nutshell.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of to-dos on that list. You don't have to obviously
lot.
do them all at once, but
That's right.
Just
just a few.
Start small.
But you're right. That's the big thing is just to say, okay, I'm not going to change the world, and it's a journey, and that's why I think, oh, tomorrow I'm going to be happy. Well, no, it's just these little steps along the way, right? It's just, but it is, yeah.
And appreciating those little steps.
Absolutely.
Recognizing those little steps.
And just,
and not beating yourself up. I mean, self-compassion.
But truly, and we do it too much, and young people especially do it in comparisons, and it's just, it's not good.
And I mean, I just had a quick question before we close here. So, do you think, because you've mentioned a lot of young people experiencing the same sort of issues, do you think that older people still are experiencing those issues to the same degree? Or have they, along their journey, come to recognize certain things and become wiser?
Oh, definitely.
Right?
Wisdom is, and because the benefit of experience, because, and that's what makes us, and that's why, and that's true. That's what, wisdom is. And I think it's different what they're experiencing because they just don't have the experience to know that, number one, tomorrow will be a better day. And anybody who's in high school thinks, this is terrible, not be able to hear from people who've gone through it and to say, it gets better. Don't think this is the be-all and end-all of it. But you're right. You're absolutely right to point that out. Is that we gain wisdom, and we have a lot to share from the wisdom, that we gain over the years.
And I think when you turn 50 or 60, all of a sudden you're like, I don't really care what people think anymore. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think when you reach that age, there's a certain freedom there. But there's also still work to be done.
There's still work to be done.
Right.
And people are at different, because I know people now that are my friends, the slightest, in book club, if the slightest remark causes them to implode because they feel their feelings are hurt or I still see it among people in my age bracket that get wounded by that stuff because they haven't reached the level of wisdom that you and I have reached. So I think I will teach them. They'll appreciate if I tell them what to do. Be like my father, you big fathead Ann.
Yes, yes. Well, you can be a mentor to them, maybe? I don't know.
That's
force your will upon them.
Yes.
That's what you can do. Oh, you're too funny.
This was really good.
Yeah, I always enjoy our conversations. During our rehearsal, you actually threw this chair at me.
Yeah, it was right. I slipped it over there. Yep.
Yeah, that was back in the fall.
Yes.
But
we did better this time.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. We kept that table,
great.
pretty solid.
No, this was great.
Yeah. So.
But I appreciate your having me because it gives me a chance to sort of share the stuff, and that you were willing to kind of listen to me.
Yeah.
Because I just think it's so important. And again, this stuff.
Yeah, I love hearing about new concepts. It gives me a lot more information. I appreciate you, and I thank you for being on the show.
No, my pleasure. An honor, really. Thank you.
Yep. Well, thank you for tuning in to Aging Boldfully. This is Susan Rohrbach. Thank you again to my guest, Dr. Ann Bergen. Remember, aging is just a number. It's living boldfully that makes life worth living. Have a great day.
This program was made possible by your Franklin friends and neighbors, good folks just like you. Thanks for supporting Franklin TV. And thanks for watching.